Welcome back to Even Tacos Fall Apart, a podcast with real stories, real struggles, and real hope. I'm MommaFoxFire, and I'm so glad you're here today. This is a space where we talk about the messy parts of mental health, chronic pain, mental illness, and resilience. No filters, no sugarcoating, just real conversations that aim to empower, inform, and remind you that you're never alone. Before we get into today's episode, I want to take a moment to acknowledge the season we're in. December can be a beautiful time of year, but it's also stressful and heavy for a lot of folks. Between the pressure to create perfect holidays, financial strain, and family dynamics, it's easy to feel overwhelmed. If you're struggling, I want you to know it's okay to take a step back and set boundaries. You're allowed to say no. You're allowed to focus on what keeps you grounded and mentally safe. The end of the year can also bring up a lot of reflection. For some, it's exciting to think about fresh starts, but for others, it can feel like a weight. If that's where you're at, I want you to know you're not alone, and it's okay to just get through the season in whatever way works for you. Whatever your holiday season looks like, I hope you find moments of peace, joy, or at the very least, relief. Now, let's get into today's topic, healing through storytelling. This conversation is real, raw, and deeply important. Sharing our stories, whether in writing, speaking, or just with someone we trust, can be an incredible way to process trauma, understand ourselves, and to connect with others. But let's not pretend it's that easy. Telling your story can stir up old pain. It can bring a fear of judgment, or you could risk not being believed. And that's why it's so important to create safe spaces for these conversations. Today's guest, Keeper Catran-Whitney, has lived this journey. He's an author and speaker who uses storytelling to navigate his own healing while shedding light on experiences that often go unheard. We're talking about family trauma, the struggles of finding emotional support as a man, and the power of vulnerability. His story is gripping, honest, and deeply human. If you've ever felt silenced, unsure how to start your healing, or overwhelmed by your past, this episode is for you. And if you haven't been there personally, but want to understand how to support someone who has, this conversation is just as important. Before we jump in, don't forget to follow the show on your favorite podcast platform and connect with me on social media. Your reviews, shares, and engagement help more people find these stories, and you never know who might need to hear them. All right, here's my conversation with Keeper on healing through storytelling. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another Mental Health Monday. Thank you so much for being here today on Twitch and on YouTube. I'm really happy to have you, and I hope that you are ready to have a really good, engaging conversation. We have a wonderful guest tonight. We are speaking with Keeper Catran-Whitney, and we're going to be talking about healing through storytelling and also a little bit about Keeper's story itself. So Keeper, thank you so much for taking the time out today and joining us. I'm very excited to talk with you.
You're very excited. I am very excited to be here. When I got the message that I have been greenlit to be on your show, I'm like, yes, I am looking forward to this. I have, but primarily, I just love the title, even tacos fall apart. And I was reading it on your website. I'm like, you know what? She's right. You just put the taco back together, and it tastes just as good. It's like, yes, even tacos fall apart like life. We put it back together as best we can, and we keep on going.
Yeah, I like the plug for the name. That's great. I mean, because it's true. Like, listen, life isn't going to go your way. It's not going to go your way. No matter who you are, no matter how wonderful you are as a human individual, life is life, and sometimes it sucks. And you just gotta kind of keep moving.
That you say life doesn't go your way. I don't look at it like that. I look at it, life is going exactly your way. It
Okay.
might not be the way you expect, but it's our energy going forward that's bringing life toward us, and so it's going our way,
Yeah.
regardless of what's happening. It's going our way, and how do we switch and go in a different direction? Ultimately, is what it boils down to.
Yeah, I like that perspective. And maybe one day I'll be in that perspective. Maybe one day. That's what we'll aim for, right?
Yes. Yes.
All right, well, let me introduce y'all to Keeper. Keeper is an author and a speaker who brings a unique blend of storytelling that transcends conventional narratives. His ability to craft a symphony of emotion and reflection, evident in his literary work, sets him apart. With a penchant for delving into the depths of depravity and presenting gripping dramas beyond measure, he offers a storytelling experience that captivates and stuns. Additionally, he's been featured on several podcasts, besides this one, of course, as well as in LA newspapers and online media. Keeper's work, including Helplessness, reflects his commitment to exploring poignant tales such as that of a disadvantaged Black singing family grappling with shattered dreams and the unforgivable actions of a stepfather who sexually abused his sisters. As a resolute stepson, he confronts this painful past, determined to stand against the predatory forces at play. This narrative not only showcases his storytelling prowess, but also demonstrates his ability to navigate complex themes with sensitivity and depth. And we're going to get into that tonight. Our main topic is going to be this healing through storytelling, and we're going to talk a little bit about the journey of that. But if you are looking to connect with Keeper on any socials or anything like that, I'm going to post a couple of links for you in the chat, so you can go ahead and click through these. Give him a follow. You know, I always say all that engagement is what matters. So go give him a follow, like some of his posts, all that good stuff, and let's help him spread his message today. And again, Keeper, just thank you for being here and taking the time.
Thank you for having me. What an introduction.
Yeah. So how did you decide I want to be an author and I want to be a speaker? How did you come to that realization in your life?
Well, it wasn't easy. As you talked about just briefly, my book, Helplessness, which that particular part of the title is just doesn't tell a story. The actual title is Helplessness. The emotional health challenges brothers experience once we learn our sisters have been sexually abused by our parents. And as I was going through my journey of trying to figure out what I was going to do with this, and it took me 45 years to get to writing the book. I had gone to a speak and write conference put on by the great Lisa Nichols down in San Diego, author, speaker, motivational person. And I'd gone down there with the mindset of writing a book about something I was very good at, direct selling. Companies like Avon, Amway, Mary Kay, I was absolutely very, very good in that industry. So I was going down there to write a book. But as I got an opportunity to go up on stage and talk about it, that's not the story that poured out of my mouth. What poured out was what had been tugging on me for decades.
Mm.
How does a brother deal with being left out of the most important conversation of his life? When your sisters say you can't talk about it, it didn't happen to you. It only happened to us girls. And so when I was called up to talk about it, what poured out was helplessness. It just did. And even after I did that, I was still very nervous because I knew I was going to have to tell my sisters, I'm going to write a book from a brother's perspective, probably the very first book of its kind, on what we go through emotionally
Mm-hmm.
when we learn our sisters have been sexually abused, because it's not a conversation we are a part of. And so I went to one of my sisters and I said, look, I want to write this book and understand I'm afraid that she is going to say, hell no, how dare you?
Yeah.
You boys can't talk about it. And I'm crying and I'm talking to her, and it's just some 45 years later, and what I got was nothing but compassion, understanding. She said, "Of course you should write about it. All you boys should write about it. It's you boys' story. It's not a girl story. It's you boys' story." And so, how it came about that I wrote the book in the way that I did was because my sister, one of my four sisters, said you should write about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I felt very, very empowered to write my story about what happened to her.
Yeah. Now, did you talk to each of your sisters, or I don't know if all of your sisters were abused, but at least each of your sisters who went through that? Did you talk to each of them before you went through this process, or was
Well,
one good enough?
I No, one is definitely not good enough,
Yeah.
certainly not in this scenario. It absolutely
Right.
cannot be. I spoke to three of the four that I was speaking, and just to kind of give you some context, in 1977, we were on the verge of music stardom. We were a very poor family. I went to 11 grade schools before I graduated high school. I lived in
Wow.
21 different places, homeless 3 times.
Mm.
I know what it's like to go into the streets, look for bottles to turn in for, get a pound of ground beef and stuff. We were singing, and Motown had just completed its exhaustive 3-year search to replace Michael Jackson and the Jackson Five. We were that family. We were the family to replace them. And we knew we were going to sign this contract on Thursday or Friday, but the Saturday prior, my oldest sister screamed upstairs and said, "You boys come downstairs, family meeting." And what took place was in the meeting, me and my brothers were hit with three emotional earthquakes. My mother told us the words no brother could ever prepare for, the words no brother ever expects to hear. Earthquake number one: your stepfather has been molesting your sisters for years. Earlier that day, my sisters and my mother had been going back and forth from bedroom to bedroom, door slamming, blah, 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 blah. And I'm just thinking the girls are just doing whatever the girls are doing, and mom's a part of it. Okay, they do this.
Right.
But apparently they were talking about telling the boys before we signed the contract. The largest new artist contract Motown offered any group at that time. My mother hits me and my three brothers with this, and we don't know what to do. We are slammed backward, about 16 or 17. And then she drops emotional earthquake number two.
Hmm.
She says, "I have known." What did you just say? As you can imagine, me and my three brothers are completely clueless.
Hmm.
We don't know what to do. And then when we're hit with it, we're paralyzed. PTSD is just washing over us. And our world is breaking.
Yeah.
We are incredibly tight, family. We are breaking apart right before my eyes. And in the midst of all of that, my oldest sister points at her four innocent brothers and says, "You can't talk about it. It didn't happen to you. It only happened to us girls." And like that, those relationships were done. And me and my three brothers, we are completely innocent.
Hmm.
But it took me a long time to understand why my oldest sister did that. I am the second oldest of us, 8 kids, four boys, four girls. My sister is the third oldest. She's protecting her sisters. And it really was difficult for me because I knew I had done nothing wrong
Hmm.
except this. What was between my stepfather's legs is what was between my legs. And through gender proximity, we were guilty.
Yeah.
So that began a 45-year journey of self discovery, trying to get back to my sisters and trying to understand the guilt and the shame and the anger and the betrayal and all of the psychological and emotional impact of all of that. How
Hmm.
does a brother have a conversation that you are told you cannot participate in, but you're expected to answer for your non participant?
Right.
So I decided years later, I had got to write a book from a brother's perspective. So other men would know they're not alone. Sisters would know what their brothers are going through when they cannot participate, because our conversation with our sisters, that's our healing.
Hmm.
That's the beginning of it. And when we can't have that, we are totally lost and we're carrying this emotional baggage, this burden for a very long time.
Yeah. Now, did they want to get this information to you before you signed the contract just because they were expecting it to come out in some way? Or what, was the timing just coincidental? Were they like, "Oh, it's just time?" Or was it tied
It
together?
was not coincidental. It was all tied together. See, at the time, before we signed with Motown, we were with United Artists Records. And that year in 77, we were everywhere. We were doing concerts, we were doing TV, we were doing magazine. We had made the coveted Billboard's Top 100 not once, not twice, but 3 times that year. But for my oldest sister, the, the thought that we were now about to make this huge jump,
Mm-hmm.
and at her age, see, my stepfather started molesting my three youngest sisters, the three youngest of us, eight, when they were 5 and 6,
Oh.
and my oldest sister when she was 11. So we're looking at 6 years that we had absolutely no idea, but it was time
Mm-hmm.
because you know, there's no good time for this conversation. You
Sure.
cannot say, as far as my sisters are concerned, well, we're going to do the deal and then, oh, we're going to wait till we make this amount and then. You can't do that, not for your emotional health.
Yeah.
You just can't do it. And so for her and my sisters, it was time for the boys to know.
Mm.
Because if you could also imagine, here we are doing all this stuff. Motown, we had the TV show all lined up, everything. We would now be discussing me if I'm on your show as part of VH1's Behind the Music, another family that fell apart, or an MTV documentary, or in this
Mm-hmm.
case, could be Netflix, Hulu, who knows,
Right.
whoever needs content. That would be us, which meant we would never escape the trauma
Yeah.
of what happened, even though you never escape it. But our lives would be in the public sphere forever, and then our children and grandchildren. It just goes on and on.
Yeah, absolutely. We dove right in. I'm going to bring us back up because you mentioned direct sales and that you were very good at that. That's kind of what you went to this writing workshop for. Uh, can you talk
Right.
a little bit about so you were there to write about maybe direct selling and that kind of thing. And you said you went up onto a stage. Was it kind of a part of the workshop where everyone went up onto the stage? Describe that aspect of this workshop.
Well, sure, it was part of the workshop, but not everyone went up. What actually happened was during this entire process, the they were calling on different people to come up.
Mm,
And this was over a 3 day period.
yeah.
And my hand is constantly going up. And I'm not being recognized at all. And then when about 30 minutes to go before the conference is over, I'm like, okay, it's not going to happen. I'm not going to be able to tell my story. And I want to write a book about how direct selling can attract a younger market because my background in marketing, entertainment, all this stuff means, okay, I know a lot about that. But I decided to put my hand up one last time, and then I was called on stage.
Yeah.
And I went up and I told the story. This is around, but maybe a room of 700 people,
Hmm.
another 5,000 online that are watching live. And I started talking. And the family story that came out, the story I have been wanting to tell from a brother's perspective came out. And that's what happened. And
Yeah.
the response was crazy. So I knew this was the right place for me.
Yeah. And you were already interested in writing, right? Because you're at this writer's workshop. Was that something that have you always been a writer or was that something new?
Completely new.
Yeah.
Completely new. I had done a couple of things in collaboration with other people. Uh, in fact, New York Times bestseller, Build It Big, 100 top direct selling experts share their views on things. I was a part of that. I had never written anything on my own.
Hmm.
Keep in mind, my fear was I had gone to 11 grade schools before I graduated high school. Not my best place of learning.
Right.
And who am I to write a book? Well, I don't know what to do. I'm already very fearful that my education is going to stop me and people are going to see this huge weakness of me. And I decided to say, you know, what the hell? I'm going to write it because people need to know. And so I just went forward with it and let the chips fall where they may.
Yeah. Yeah. That's really neat. I mean, that takes a lot of courage and a lot of guts to just say, "Fuck it, I'm doing it."
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, that's
You know,
great.
there's a book in 1995 by Dr. Susan Jeffers called Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Yeah.
I felt the fear and I did it anyway. And part of going forward and getting the mental strength and emotional strength about you sometimes requires you just feel it and you do
Hmm.
it anyway. To get through, sometimes you just have to go through. And
Yeah.
I was amazed at what I was able to write. I was it just came out.
Yeah. So now you've already written and you're a speaker as well. What do you enjoy doing when you're not busy writing and speaking?
I love watching anime with my kids. That's what I love doing. Anime. We have family movie night. We have family anime night. I just love anime. Anything that allows me to hang out with my kids and grandkids, that's what I'm doing.
If you were going to recommend an anime to someone who doesn't really know anime, which one would you recommend?
Well, right now we are going through the Demon Slayer saga again.
Okay.
So I love Demon Slayer. Yeah, so waiting for the movie to come out. So we're at a point where the new movie. So yeah, I love Demon Slayer.
I'll have to see if so my youngest really loves anime and he's always been so I mean my older one does too. Don't get me wrong. But I'll have to see if that's one that he's watched. I feel like I've heard the name, so he probably has.
But my all-time favorite is Dragon Ball Z.
Okay. All
Easily,
right.
my all-time favorite is Dragon Ball Z,
Yeah.
and I've watched so many of them from Trigun to just so many different ones. But I seem to always come back to Dragon Ball Z.
Yeah. I mean, that's good. You got kind of that favorite, that comfort, that like this is a good one. And
Yeah.
he's definitely watched some of that one. I was trying to remember the one that he's watching. Oh, you know what? He just started a new one though. He was watching through Avatar: The Last Airbender again. He's watched that one several
Hmm.
different times. Um, but he just started a new one. It's like The Last Kids on Earth or something like that. So he's enjoying it. uh,
Excellent.
yeah, it's a good one. Now, this is going to sound like a totally different question, but it's become kind of this audience favorite question. So, do you have a true crime story that fascinates you?
Not really. Um, I was thinking about, a crime story. No, I don't have a favorite one.
No true
Sorry.
crime story? That's all right. How about like a favorite? Well, we just talked about anime. What's your favorite book?
My favorite book is Harry Potter.
Ah, nice.
Okay. So I love Harry Potter, and the author I'm not too happy with these days.
Yeah, I agree.
But
Yep.
yeah, I have listened to Harry Potter on
Mhm.
audiobook almost every day since 2000.
Wow.
I get in the car and Harry Potter goes on, and
Mhm.
I just play book one through book seven over and over and over again. There's just so much beauty in the characters, particularly Dumbledore
Mhm.
and Hagrid. There's just so much humanity in those two characters. And so I constantly listen to Harry Potter. It relaxes me. It allows me to, if I'm in a not a particularly good place mentally, or what I really refer to as emotionally, Harry Potter just settles me down.
Yeah. I agree. I'm not a fan of the author. I think she can pound sand, and
Yeah.
that's fine. But those books, when they were coming out in like the, I don't know, late 90s, early 2000s, whenever they were coming out, they're what helped my two younger sisters really learn to love reading. And so, and
Hmm.
I witnessed that. Like I was a little too old for them when they were coming out. I think I did read them, but they would read them to each other. They would alternate chapters and say like, "Here, I'm going to read you this chapter and you read me this chapter." And it was neat to watch them like fall in love with the books and the characters like you're talking about. And now they love to read, which they kind of didn't before. So, yeah, I think they're great books. They were very, very well
One
written.
of the things my wife and I did was we would listen to a disc a night with our children.
Okay.
A disc a night. And it's one thing to read
Hmm.
a book. It's another thing to sit back and listen and imagine the environment, imagine the characters really doing their thing, because everyone who's listening has a different interpretation
Hmm.
of what's going on. And you can really immerse yourself into an audio book, particularly if it's a storytelling, if it's a fiction, and some nonfiction depends
Hmm.
on if it's a memoir or something like that. But to be able to just be unencumbered by having to turn the page and look down and track it like that, as opposed to just taking it in, from an audio standpoint
Hmm.
and just closing your eyes, it really brought me, my wife, and my kids together in a way I never imagined. It was the family thing to do. We get on the road, put in Harry Potter. The
Hmm.
kids are demanding, we want to hear it. And then when Dumbledore went through his thing, the collective, we were all feeling the same thing. We were all feeling it, and yet we talked about it afterwards and said, okay, what did you imagine that looking like? And we all had a different interpretation.
Yeah.
We all felt the same emotional pull. The
Hmm.
storytelling was
That's awesome. I've never been able to get into like audiobooks. For me, reading does put that picture into my head the same way. But not to keep talking about my sister, but my sister, I don't remember what it's called, but it's the thing where you can't see things in your mind, like you can't visualize them in your mind. But she loves audiobooks. So it's not even just about trying to figure out, what helps you picture it. It's kind of just what helps you take
yeah.
it in, what helps you take it in whatever way you need to take it in. But yeah, I love that. That's
I
great.
listen to audiobooks and I read books all
Hmm.
the time.
Yeah.
The only real audiobook that I listen to is Harry Potter over and over again for 24 years, almost daily.
Yeah. Yeah. I read voraciously. I love reading. I just audiobooks are not necessarily my thing. Even podcasts. And listen, this is a podcast, but I have a hard time if I'm not doing something else at the same time. I can't really listen to podcasts because my mind will just go away.
Hmm. Hmm.
But I listen to podcasts while I cook or while I'm sitting at my son's activities or whatever. So it is what it is. Everybody has different strokes for different folks, which is fine.
Right.
Now we've talked a little bit about storytelling and now we're talking about kind of like taking in that storytelling a little bit too, but what role does the telling of your story play in your own emotional and mental well-being?
Well, I'm glad you asked because they talk about mental health and emotional health and storytelling. I think from the mental health to the emotional health aspect of it, they're two vastly different things.
Hmm.
And this is what I learned when writing the book. Oftentimes, there's a lot of talk about mental health these days. And mental health is usually not the challenge for people initially. Initially, it's the emotional health that needs to be addressed that is rarely ever addressed.
Hmm.
And so, as I'm writing Helplessness, I'm noticing that I'm going through this emotional upheaval. I'm having my own self worth challenges. I'm imagining what my sisters are going through, really vivid imaginings. I'm imagining what he's doing to them, what my mother's alive. I'm imagining all of it. And I realize this is not an this is not a mental health challenge for me. This is an emotional one. And so when something is written from within your soul, it's easier to put it on paper because you go through a lot of the emotions that you experienced prior. And oftentimes when people tell their story, their personal story, it's usually very good. So what became the mental part of it as I was writing it, I noticed, you know what, you never got the emotional part taken care of. And I had gotten to a part in the book where I was on the verge of killing my stepdad. It was time for him to die and I was about to do it. I had everything I needed to kill him. And so as I'm writing the book, I realized, you know what? You went to a really dark place there. And I think when your emotional needs aren't taken care of, you go to a mental place, which for me is logic thinking, it's alone, it's isolation. Okay. And I'm writing the book. And I'm thinking, you know what? The only reason you went there is because emotionally you weren't taken care of. Since
Hmm.
this is Mental Health Monday, I think when we have this discussion, most people have to go through the emotional phase. And if they can't get that supported. And we go to this dark place because emotional health is about feelings, it's about shared experience, it's about community involvement. And when we can't get that, so I realized as I was writing the book, even for me and my brothers and sisters, none of us got the emotional part.
Yeah.
So we all went mental. So when writing the book, it became, once I took a step back, it became easier for me to tell the emotional part. It was hard. It was really hard, but it did expand my mind on what I could actually write about. I was willing to accept that I was not only the author, but I was also a victim and a survivor.
Mm.
When you can write about that kind of stuff, it can be very cathartic, but it can be very, very, very painful. But I went through that process. Um, so I just happen to think if you could tell a story about yourself, it's easier to tell. You can grow from it, which I certainly did. So those are the kind of stories that I like, unless they're Harry Potter, because those are real.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I can definitely relate a little bit to that because when I tell my own story of some of the things that I've been through, it's kind of like if I can just tell it, first of all, maybe someone else can benefit from it. But then also, if I'm to the place where I can tell my story confidently and get through it in a way that is coherent, because sometimes that's difficult too. So like it just comes out. It's just like that verbal vomit piece. You got to get past that if you really want to tell a story. So
Yeah,
yeah, it helps you process it a little bit. Helps you process through what you've been through and where you are currently and what you could do to help yourself even more where from wherever you are now.
I think what it does for people who are able to read your story or my story, for those people who can't talk about the experience and it may be very similar, it allows them to live through us.
Yeah.
It allows them to say, okay, uh, he's going through this, she's going through that. That's me as well. And so there's that benefit to the person who's reading it who can say, okay, I'm not alone. And the challenge for those of us who write our personal stories, that can come with, ooh, people are going to know how vulnerable I am. Am I really willing to put this out there? Which is
Yeah.
not an easy thing to do. I just felt that mine really just hinged on I did not want my family story to end on the dunghill of so many millions of other families through time. I decided that I wanted my family story, my brother's story, to be one that could benefit, that could help others. And whatever I was going to have to go through, I was going to have to go through. And I went through a lot, but I'm really happy that I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Now, we've talked about mental health and kind of the emotional health as well, and that these kind of lead to healing, and all of that is very central to your narrative. Did you also go to therapy, or did you employ other mental health tools or practices while you were kind of on this healing journey?
That is a great question. I sought out many counselors, practitioners in the mental health field. And to a person, they told me they could not help me.
Really?
They told me they could not help me to a person, male, female, it made no difference. Clergy, you name it, I can't help you. And this is their explanation. Your story is from a brother's perspective. I don't know what to do with that. I've never had anything like this before. If you were a woman, if you were a girl and you came to me, I could help you. If you needed family therapy, I could help you. But I have never heard of a situation of the type of trauma brothers carry. I don't know what to do for you. And
Interesting.
so I was left alone, even to this day. Back in 1977, I could go to a library, I could go to a bookstore, and I could find hundreds of articles written by women for women all day. And of course, there needed to be, absolutely,
Yes,
because of what
yes.
men have done historically. I could find a documentary, I could find a movie, there could be an interview by Dr. Phil or someone back then. But today, the same thing still applies. There are no books, there are no articles, there are no interviews about what brothers experience. 12-step programs, not even one-step program. So I had to come up with my own way of dealing with this. And part of it was I needed to find someone I could talk to,
Mm.
someone who would not judge me. And that's the challenge. Who do you go to that you trust, that will allow you to speak, that won't give us the dude, I'd have done this, or
Mm-hmm.
girl, I'd have done this, who would have given us, who would give me the noise, or give my sisters the noise, because we never talked about it. My brothers and I never talked about it. I couldn't even go to them. We followed exactly what our sister said. So I had to come up with a way to do it. And I figured years later, the only way forward was not only did I have to speak to someone, I needed to speak to myself. The very people who told me I want nothing to do with you.
Mm.
It was frightening. But for me, I knew it was the only way
Mm-hmm.
that I was going to get what I needed, because I could go to a therapist, I could go to a counselor, and they should have been able to help me.
Yeah.
And I always told them, I said, what if all 10 members of my family were in a auto accident and I was the only one to survive? Could you help me? I just lost my entire family. They said, yes.
Yeah.
And now
Survivor's
I'm a
guilt.
brother, but yeah, I'm a brother, and uh, you're saying that you can help me with that, but you can't help me with the loss of my family simply because it has to do with child sexual abuse. You
Mm.
realize it's not, it's the same thing. I still lost my family.
Yeah.
Nope, I can't help you. So it became really, really important that I find someone. But before I could even do that, I had to accept the fact that I was a victim.
Mm.
6 years before my sisters, my older brother and I were sexually abused by our babysitters almost daily for 6 months. So even before my sisters, and the only ones who knew that were me and my older brother and my mother and at the time, my mother's boyfriend ended up becoming our stepdad.
Mm.
We we carried the knowledge of knowing that we were a direct victim. And so I didn't realize I was a victim until literally 7 years ago, so
Wow.
2017. I didn't know because there was no one for me to talk to. There was no one to help me process,
Mm-hmm.
the depression and isolation. There was just no one to help me deal with the confusion and the mental and emotional crisis that I was going through, except my sisters. And so I felt the fear, and I did it anyway. My thing was, come what may. They're going to scream, they're going to be pissed, they're going to be mad, but I need this. And a part of that comes with accepting my trauma,
Mm-hmm.
not running away from it, accepting that it is part of my DNA. And like DNA, it can be self replicating. And trauma, when it's self replicating, can replicate in dark ways, which I realized that's what took me to almost kill myself.
Mm.
So that was the main thing. I need someone to talk to. And of all people, ended up being three of my sisters.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I mean, it's great that y'all have this relationship now that you can have these conversations and talk about this kind of stuff more openly,
Mhm.
right? Was it hard to get to
Yeah,
that point with them?
girl, you have no idea. I think the definition of a brother who has sisters is to protect their honor.
Mm.
I did not do that. I did not do that for years, even after we knew, because they said, don't talk to me.
Right.
And I had already lost my family in one sense. I did not want to lose them by stepping over that boundary that they had set up. Otherwise, clip, 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 I am now floating emotionally in ethers,
Right.
not having any sort of attachment to them. So I didn't do anything. Uh, but when I decided to write Helplessness, I knew I had to accomplish one thing. Not only did I have to let them know, but I also figured I've got to see if they would be willing to write a section of the book.
Yeah.
You talk about fear. It was one thing to go to each one individually, particularly my sister who said she can't talk about it. And I just waited for the wrath to come down on me. I
Right.
waited for all hell to break all over me. And to a person, they all said because time has a way of healing, particularly families, has a way of settling things down, perspective and evolution and emotionally and able to evolve. They all said, yes, you should write about it. But then when I decided, you know what, I think this book needs their voice. It really needs their voice. Otherwise, people, and particularly women, are going to say, well, you know, your sister's right. It is just, it did just happen to them, even though it happened to all of us.
Hmm.
Whether me and my brothers knew about it or not, we were still feeling the effects of it. We just didn't know it.
Right.
So when I went to each of them, the first is my sister, who I spoke to out in front of the garage, and she said, yes, you should write it. And then I spoke to one of my twin sisters, the two youngest, one of the two youngest, and she said, absolutely, you should write it. My oldest sister, who said, you can't talk about it. I picked up the phone to call her. It weighed a ton.
Yeah.
I knew the story needed them. It really did. So that sisters who read the book could see and hear, could read what my sisters had to say.
Hmm.
Regardless of what they said about me, it was going in. I wasn't going to edit anything they said. You say what you need to say because the world needs to hear what you're saying. Don't worry about me. I will be okay. I picked up the phone and I set it down. I set it down for a day. But every time I picked it up, you know what happened? Something more important came up.
Mm.
I needed to wash the clothes. I needed to go do the dishes. I needed to go outside, watch paint dry. It was so important. But that's that emotional challenge. The trauma is just slamming into me. I don't want to do it. Not her. Oh, no, no. I could deal with the other two. Felt the fear and did it anyway. And when I called her and told her what I wanted to do and said, look, I want you to contribute, she was silent for about 2 minutes. And I'm just sweating bricks. Like, dude, you messed up. You really lost her now. There is no way she will ever talk to you until she just kind of cleared her throat. Well, okay. Okay, what? Okay, I'll write something. You're going to write something? Okay. So then I took the next step. I said, okay, how about this? How about, and I'm just cringing. I'm just cringing. What if we did an interview and I just put the whole interview?
Hmm.
Would you be willing to, you and I have a dialogue? You could say whatever you want to say. You could be a part. You could do whatever you need to say. Okay, I'll do it.
That's
Wait,
awesome,
thank you.
though.
It really is. I went 45 years not talking about this.
Right.
And so much of what we fear is what we create in our mind.
Yeah.
We create the fear, and of course, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yep.
That's what we are so good at. But imagine if we created a different idea. Oh, they're going to be okay. Everything's going to be fine. You know what? I'm going to get beat up a little bit. I've experienced worse.
Hmm.
If I could get through that, I could survive this. Okay. Well, I'm already expecting her to say no and be mad. Oh, okay. So that's not going to be a surprise. That's not what we do.
Yeah.
We cling to that dark, hairy part, even though we've already accepted what the probable outcome is. But if we already know what the outcome is, why are we so scared? Because of the emotional impact. And I did it. And she said, okay. They all said, okay.
Hmm.
As did two of my brothers. They all said, okay. You get a full family view with this. It's it's been quite a journey writing this thing.
Hmm.
That's the creative part of it. Watching me go through it. It's been an amazing experience, and I would not change it for the world.
Yeah.
People, they ask me, they said, so if you could, what would you take out of your story? And I tell them nothing. Knowing what I know now, because I know that my family story can help.
Hmm.
Where I thought our story was going to be about great music and blah, 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 blah. No, I now accept it like this.
Hmm.
We were meant to go through everything we went through with that process. That's why we are here. The 10 of us came together for this, as ugly as it is, as traumatic as it was. We were meant to go through this. And out of that, it was meant for me to write this. Let other brothers and sisters know they're not alone. Other men know you're not alone. And going through what I went through, and me and my brothers and other sisters, you're not alone in your disappointment and anger with your brothers, but you need to talk at some
Yeah.
point.
Yeah. You mentioned kind of the creative expression of writing. Do you have any other creative outlets, or is writing your main one? Like, do you paint, or do you still sing or anything like that? And does that help at all with your healing, if so?
I think my most creative outlet is working out. I love working out. I love exercise because not only does it allow me to relax and just get away from it all, but I get to, build the kind of body that I want. I just finished a really big fitness challenge with this guy named Sean T, who created this DVD series called Insanity, and I was the oldest by almost 3 years,
Wow.
and I blew everyone out of the water, blew them
Good.
all out of the water. So I love fitness, and so that is my relaxing time. Because I guess it's just another one of those things I get to get away and get out of my head.
Yeah, pour yourself into it a little bit.
And yeah, yeah, and just hanging out with my kids and my new grandson. Yeah, that's it.
Aw, awesome.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. You've got to have those. Otherwise, we stay in this dark place.
yeah,
So no, I don't paint.
yeah,
Um, I don't sing as much. But I exercise.
yeah. That's okay. I mean, listen, if it helps you, it helps you. That's if it helps you and doesn't hurt anyone
But
else, then it's good. So, how has facing your past and really addressing this trauma, how has that shaped your perspective on healing and also on self-compassion?
what is missing in the conversation in terms of feeling that if we can't get it, it really determines the trajectory of our life.
Yeah.
Okay. Particularly if you are a young boy in this situation and you can't get the support tools, you can't get these systems that are not in place for you, which they still aren't today.
Hmm.
How you interact with girls and women is directly tied to the support you do or do not get. And I saw that as I was writing, um, that lack of support really in talking to my brothers and my sisters about it and interviewing them that none of us got it. So it impacted and just really just shaped everything. The For me as a man, the other part is I never felt I could be whole unless I got the support. And the support once again came through my family, the very people I was having the most difficulty with, and very people who I didn't want to speak to. So I would go through these periods, which we often do when you are dealing with trauma of any kind, be it a mental challenge or an emotional challenge. There are many things that pull you back to the past,
Yeah.
and you can have these intrusive thoughts and flashbacks and definitely emotional triggers. And I was able through the book realize what my triggers were.
Mm-hmm.
Triggers ended up becoming movies, commercials, music that took me back to the past. It was everything. It was around me all the time. And for most of us, we don't realize just how much we're being triggered every day,
Yeah.
all day. And without figuring out a way, and for me, recognizing that I'm in pain, that I'm in trauma, job one, and then finding people that I can talk to or finding a way to get to those places where I can just settle down, get away from my head, get out of my head, I should say. Um, I knew that was going to be lost. Another part of what came out of writing the book, I was a chronic stutterer as a kid, still stutter to this day. But I looked at it as an opportunity, which whenever I'm doing a podcast or TV or any kind of interview, I go through these pauses and things that I'm trying to figure out a way to say what I'm going to say, which I have done, many times in this conversation. But it was one of those things that builds me up. It gives me
Mm-hmm.
self-confidence. I'm able to bring all of that to bear with my healing. So it's not just writing the book. It's now getting out and talking in front of people, which is another way for me to heal, another way to feel very, very self-confident about who I am. There are
Mm-hmm.
just many ways to go about it. There are, there's counseling, there are resources out there, there are family therapies or individual therapies and things like this. And if you can bring in as much of those things that challenge you into the conversation, ultimately you can be a much well-rounded person.
Yeah. And that's, that the power in the pause is one of those things that they teach you in public speaking classes, and also in things like Toastmasters and that sort of
Yeah,
those sort of activities and everything. They teach you that it's okay to just take a second, figure out what you want to say, and then say it. And it can be really powerful.
I downloaded an Instagram thing this afternoon about a guy talking about the power of the pause and what that does. And I've always recognized that just because of my singing. But my pause is so I could figure out a way to say what I need to say. Because certain words, if they start sometimes with a T or an
Mm.
R or a P, I get stuck. So I'm looking for this runway.
Around it.
And oftentimes, yeah, but what it did
Yeah.
do, it made me a storyteller.
I can
So
see
now I have to
that.
tell a story to get to where I'm at. I'm like, oh, there was a benefit in this whole stutter thing. And so I'm constantly looking for ways to say, okay, that ended up being a good thing.
Yeah.
And so I pause. Okay, how do I get to that word? I need to start over here with this word and then ramp up to it. And so I ended up becoming a storyteller.
Hmm.
I love telling stories. I'm talking in public.
I mean, it makes sense if you're trying to get from point A to point B without using a certain word. Sometimes it means you got to use four words to get like four extra words to kind of get over to there. So, yeah, I mean that's perfect
Yeah.
if you're a storyteller. That's perfect. Uh, in your writing, how do you make sure that you're storytelling and you're getting to all of these stories with other people also? How do you make sure that that's not only cathartic for you, but also sensitive and supportive for those who might have had similar traumas? My cat just unplugged my. Pardon me 1 second. You just unplugged my light, dude. Where
Like
did
your
you
cat
go?
said, play.
That's so funny.
Well, I'll go ahead.
Okay.
I'll go ahead and answer your question while you figure out your technical challenges.
I always have technical challenges. But how
Um,
do you make sure that your storytelling is sensitive enough for others to read?
for me, and I can only talk about me, this is not to sound callous
Mhm.
or insensitive, but if I'm going to tell my story, if I'm really going to be truthful, and mine requires that I be incredibly vulnerable about the woulda, coulda, shoulda along the way,
Mm.
about there's just stuff that I could have and didn't do. I couldn't worry about what other people were going to think. I just couldn't.
Mm-hmm.
Because if I'm going to, it was therapy for me in writing it. And I knew the power ultimately with people who read it would be that I was authentic,
Yeah.
that I was truthful, that I was vulnerable, that I was willing to just lay bare all of it. After I wrote it, that's where I got to. But I did not care what anyone thought.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't care if they thought it was sensitive. See, helplessness, um, we go into some dark places.
Yeah.
And some people who've read it said, you don't give us a chance to breathe in this book. I mean, it is just there. I said, yeah, because it's called helplessness for a reason. I'm writing hopefulness now. Happiness is coming. But here's the thing, if I'm going to write a book called Helplessness and it involves what my sisters went through, did my stepdad give my sisters a chance to breathe?
Yeah.
I said, no. And why should you?
Mm-hmm.
If you really want to know what it's like for a little girl to go through that and a brother to imagine it, you need to know the real thing. And I said, well, you can't miss the real thing. I said, no, this is not People magazine. This is not that kind of thing. So it was all about just from a cathartic standpoint. For me, it was about me. And then I knew if I did that effectively and just did it, it would resonate. It has resonated with so many people. Dude,
Yeah.
you get it. In fact, women, you're part of the team. You really get it. Yeah. I'm just telling my story and hopefully, it helps at least one person.
Yeah. Absolutely. Do you think that there is a specific power in storytelling for marginalized communities or those who have been silenced in some way?
Without question. Most of the narratives, certainly here in the United States, are not controlled by marginalized people. When I'm talking about marginalized people, I'm going to be very, very clear and very, very blunt. And it might not sit well with some people. When we're talking about marginalized people who control the narrative, anyone who is a non-white man
Yeah.
is marginalized in this country. And you can go from the top to the bottom, you're going to find them all over. Yes, there is a lot of power just because of marginalized people. My son, who is non-binary and came out maybe 2 years ago, and the bravery, and he's married, and he has our only grandchild. And to watch him go through that process, knowing that he or they did not want to talk about it, and then just put it out there like they did, I saw the transformation in them.
Mm-hmm.
I just talking about their situation. You talk that is a marginalized community
Yeah.
if there ever was one right now. So things are getting better each day, but to watch them go through that and just step out there and see people gravitate toward them and be so embracing of them. Marginalized communities, more than any other, need to have voices out there
Mm-hmm.
in every way possible, without question.
Yeah. And I think that it is an uncomfortable truth. I mean, it definitely is something that not everyone is going to want to hear, and especially the people, at the top are not going to want to hear that.
Yeah.
But that's not who it's
Part
for.
of no, it is not. Well, it is and it isn't. But whether it's not for them cannot be the determining factor that whether or not you speak on it.
Absolutely.
It cannot be the determining factor that stops you from stepping into and owning your space. Because the ultimate power of your healing is you stepping into your space, which I experienced, and just talking about it and sharing it with the world. So much of your trauma just kind of melts away mentally and emotionally just kind of goes away. It's like, oh, what was I so afraid of? When I watch my son, I watch my son transition to being non-binary. To watch them now go through it, um, it is empowering.
Hmm.
But there are people who do not want us who are marginalized to not have that power.
Yeah,
But it can't be about them. To hell with them. It's about
absolutely.
us.
Yeah, agree. What's the most surprising thing you've learned about yourself through all this writing and story sharing and speaking that you've done?
That I'm okay. And I'm okay. There was a moment when I was having a hard time with all this stuff. And I guess must have been about 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning. And I'm just tossing and turning, and I'm thinking, you know what, you messed up. You could have done this. So much is just, I wish I could beat myself. And I got up and I went into the bathroom. I turned on the light and I looked in the mirror and I just stared at myself. And I just said, you know what? You're a good guy. You are a good guy. Don't worry about what anyone else thinks. That was the most surprising thing for me, to accept that I'm a good person, that I am worthy of being a brother to my sisters in the way that they wanted, being a father to my kids in the way that they would need. But a lot of that was about, I needed to be okay with me. And so that was the most surprising thing that night, that morning, being up and doing that, and things changed radically for me after that. I I just settled down a lot.
Hmm.
I just stopped beating myself up. So that was the most surprising part of it.
Yeah. Did you have like an actual narrative in your head that you weren't a good person, or was it just a generally like you hadn't recognized that you're a good person up until that point? Was it like the opposing that you were facing, or was it just not recognizing that you were out loud yet?
The reason why I got there is because 3 months before my wife and I were to be married in 1986, we've now been married 38 years. And my stepdad is, for the most part, gone because I got him out of the house when I threatened to kill him. He was gone, even though my mother continued to see him and all this.
Mm.
What played out and what convinced me that I was not a good guy was what I did right before the wedding. That started, my mother and I really weren't talking at that. This is in the book too. I hold nothing out. I went to her and I'm losing weight and I'm not eating, and yeah, I'm losing weight. I'm not eating. I'm just having a really, really, really hard time because I know the chances of her bringing him back around is really good, and I cannot let him be around my sisters. It just cannot happen, especially if I'm married. I'm the only one who did something, but I know my mother. She's all about image, which is why she never did anything in the first place.
Mm.
I'm not really talking to her, okay? I told my fiance, I said, look, I'm going to give my mother an olive branch. I'm going to say, here's an olive branch. So, with about 3 weeks before we got married, after 3 months of just really feeling all the stress, I went to my mother and I said, okay, look, understand we do not want him in our wedding, period.
Yeah.
But if you want to invite him, it's up to you. But we do not want him. And I'm thinking, okay, this is going to make us okay. We can now start to have some dialogue. We can now start to have some conversation between the two of us. Because if I had kids, I want my kids to know their grandmother. I don't want them to not know her. So I'm going to do this knowing she's going to do the right thing. And I knew as soon as she told me this, I had messed up. She said, well, baby, let me think about it. And I knew in an effort to do something good to bring my family together at the wedding, she and I try to stick to my word. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I do it.
Mm-hmm.
He invited him to the wedding. He's in every picture just about. And so the brother who got him away is responsible for bringing him back. So it is the greatest regret of my life. So I'm dealing with this for years. How could you? You let them down. You did this. You saved them, and now you did this. And so I am just beating myself up for years. That was the narrative of why I was not a good guy.
Mm.
Failed my sisters again. I took that course and I said I could never, ever do that. And yet that's what I did. I'm not speaking to three of my sisters at this time. I'm only speaking to the sister I talked to about the book. Yet, you hear the how come you didn't hear my crying? How come you didn't see my tears? I'm not a good guy. How could I, of all brothers, of all the people in the family, do that? And so I'm struggling with this. I'm struggling with this. And so I got up out of bed and said, you're a good guy. You were trying to do something for everyone. You were trying to heal. You were
Mm.
trying to give us to cling to. Yeah, you fucked up, but you weren't doing it for the wrong reason. You were trying to do it for the right reason. And sometimes we do those things.
Mm-hmm.
We intend to do something for the right reason, and it comes out wrong. It was just another bit of trauma for me. So yeah, that was the narrative. I was the brother was who had failed them.
Yeah.
As I said, time. My sisters gave me a way back.
Yeah.
They gave me a way back. So my sisters are my hero, you know. And with helplessness, I was able to bring closure for them. When I tracked down my stepdad and did something pretty intense, but I was able to bring them some closure, and at the same time bring me some closure.
Mm-hmm.
And it adds a lot more color to the book.
Yeah. I mean, even in you telling that part of the story, I feel like a lot of the time we put the blame on ourselves when that's not necessarily where the blame belongs. But it's easier to take that on to yourself in some cases, or you think it's easier to take that on yourself in some cases and say, like, I should have done differently. I should have done this. If I had done this, they wouldn't have done that. But it's they wouldn't have done that. It was their action that was actually the problem and not what you did. And that's so hard sometimes. That's so hard to process through.
It's going to that mental place, that dark place where
Yeah.
I'm alone, I'm in isolation, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm logically thinking all this through, and I'm
Yes.
in this mental health hamster wheel, just zoo, zoo,
Oh.
zoo, zoo, zoo. But what I'm feeling is emotional trauma. And once again, that's why it's called the emotional health thing, because I'm in my feelings, right?
Yeah.
I'm I need to share this. I need to bring other people in, and we just beat ourselves up to no
Yeah.
end. It's self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm-hmm.
And yet it's the one place we say we don't want to be, but Jesus Christ, if we're not there all the time,
Yeah. It's
because
very
it's
true.
comfortable. It really is
It's familiar.
comfortable
It might
to
not be
go there.
comfortable. It's familiar.
Yeah, and it being familiar makes it comfortable. Oh, I know what this
Yeah.
is like. I know what to expect.
Yeah.
Hey, yeah. But that's not the place that we need to be.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very much like the devil you know versus the devil you don't know kind of situation,
Right.
which is not
You are right.
ideal, generally speaking. What advice would you give to someone who has experienced trauma and is struggling to kind of find their own way of healing like you have?
Keep in mind, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a
Absolutely.
therapist. I'm not a counselor. My experience is through lived experience. The greatest advice that I could give anyone, anyone, is to accept that you are in trauma. Do not push it away. Embrace it.
Mm.
It is who you are because it's not going anywhere. It's never going to leave you. That's number one. Number two, find someone who you can, who will just let you talk, let you start to get out of your head. Just tell them, I don't need you to say anything. I don't need you to agree with me. I just need to talk. Can I just talk?
Mm-hmm.
And it is empowering. And then at that point, you can begin to explore, okay, where do I need to go? Do I need to get to a a um, a psychologist? Do I need to go to therapy? Do I need counseling of some kind? Without the acceptance that we are in trauma, there's very little chance of healing, if
Mm-hmm.
at all. You have to accept it, and I had to accept it. I did not go to counseling, even though I attempted. But as you remember, people told me they could not help me.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted nothing to do with me, and so uh, um, I had to end up. I had to end up talking. When I found out that I was in trauma, that I was a victim, was really weird. I'm writing the book, and I'm in a section about my sisters, and I didn't realize he had gotten to my younger sisters, the twins. I didn't realize it, even though they had told me he did, but I just never accepted it. I just always thought, okay, he just got to the two oldest ones. So I'm in bed with my wife, and I'm telling her about it, and she looks at me and she says this, you're a victim. No, I'm not. I'm just telling you what I'm writing. Look at you. Of course you are a victim. All you boys are a victim. I'm saying, no, I'm not. What are you talking about? I'm not a victim. I'm just telling you what I'm writing about this section. And then she said, look at you. You're shaking. You're sweating. You're a mess. Of course you're a victim.
Mm.
That was 7 years ago. Remember earlier I said I didn't even realize it? It was because of that conversation. Not everyone can tell you
Yeah.
that you're a victim, and you hear it. Only people who are incredibly close to you, who you really trust. And yet I pushed back. I really did. I was not going to have it. Like, what are you talking about? It's the girls that are victims. I'm a man. I'm strong. Don't tell me this. And then it hit me. And I still didn't believe her
Mm.
until the next day. I got up and I Googled if a little boy is being sexually abused by their babysitter, does that mean that they're a sexual abuse victim? Yes. For 50 years, I denied it. I probably denied it simply because I didn't believe it.
Mm-hmm.
Me, a man, a black man? Are you kidding? Hey, it it was a shock to me.
Mm-hmm.
It blew my mind. And so the talking part, and then my wife and I we continued to talk, and then of all things, I told my two kids. I told them um, everything. And surprisingly, what what my son said at the time, what they ended up saying, I was not prepared for. They just heard me talk about the entire process of what we went through and what I did and didn't do, all of it. And what they said was, I would hope that if I ever experienced anything like that with my sister or any other woman, I would have the strength what you did. What do you mean? He said, I hope I would have the strength to do what you did. Yes, I heard everything that you said. But what I've seen here is my father is incredibly strong and courageous. And I'm seeing my father who the one thing that he really wants to do is find a way back to his sister.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I'm seeing. I'm not seeing you as someone who has failed, who hasn't. I'm seeing the only person who stood up for them, the only person who didn't abandon the mission. You completed the mission, and it was it was. I'm just in tears. I'm like, this is so interesting because what I realized in that moment, how this trauma is generational.
Mm.
He was able to see and appreciate what I did and say, I am not going to do that. And I hope if something like that ever happened, I'm going to have the strength and the courage to do it. There's always someone watching.
Yeah.
That's one of the things with trauma. There's always someone watching.
Mm-hmm.
You might not think there is anyone paying attention. Children see, spouse, your loved ones see, the neighbors across the street. There's always someone watching. And ultimately, it comes back to what do you want to leave them with? Can you leave them with something positive? Can you leave them with something strong? Can you leave them with an example that would benefit them? I did not expect it, but that's what I did for my son. I, my daughter told me the same thing. She said, every guy, when I'm looking to date someone, you are the example. Like, I messed up so much. Like, no, you didn't. You didn't mess up. You took responsibility. You handled it. Just never know.
Yeah. I mean, kids, I think definitely understand intent also. You might feel like as a parent, you've
Mhm.
really screwed things up along the way, but they understand intent more than I think we give them credit for. Also.
Oh, they have this way of letting us know that we messed up.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Listen,
Yeah,
I've got a
sorry.
17-year-old and a 10-year-old, and boy, do they have their ways.
Yes, you know what you did when I was 4? I'm like, really?
You remember that time, Mom?
And like, come on. Do we still have to, litigate that? Come
Yeah.
on.
Yeah. I do want to go back to something that you said because you were talking about just being able to talk to your wife and just kind of get these things out to her and finding someone who you can just talk to without that fear of judgment. And one of the things I've got a small handful of friends who I can go to and say, "Can I just vent? Do you have the space for me to just vent for a while? Like I'm not solutioning. I'm not trying to figure shit out. I don't need feedback. I just need to know that someone's listening right now." And if you can start the conversation that way and say like, "Hey, can I just talk at you for a little bit and have you just listen?" Because sometimes, first of all, sometimes people don't have the capacity for that. They've got their own shit going on and they don't have the space to take in anything else. But most of the time, very rarely has anyone said, "I don't have the mental capacity right now." But giving them that option also makes sure that you're getting a fulfilling experience back. Because if you give them that option to say, "Hey, do you have the space right now?" And then they say yes or no. If they say yes, great. You know you've got someone who is there for you and they are there for you in that moment. And if they say no, you're like, "Okay, that's fine. I'm going to go to the next person." Or you just say, "Can you let me know when you do?" And we'll come back and revisit this. But having those people who you trust and who you know really well and who you can say, "Do you have space for something either really traumatic or this specific issue that it's come up before, or just I had a shitty day, can I talk for a while?" Giving them the opportunity to be there for you and then also reciprocating that as well, right? Like be there for other people in that capacity. But just asking for that permission to vent a little bit, I think is really, really helpful. And it maybe it's a little different with a spouse because they're generally there for you to vent to, right? But yeah, finding you some close friends doesn't always have to be about therapy. Therapy is great, and in a lot of cases, it's helpful. We've talked about how sometimes therapy can be harmful as well. So it's
Mm.
all across the board, but find those people in your circle of friends that you can talk to about anything because you got to have at least a couple in your life. It's gold.
I think that's one of the differences between men and women, even though men are finally starting to round into or accept the idea of need to talk. Mm. Women tend to have those conversations with each other much, much better than men.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in large part that is due to a societal construct. It is something that we built into male female dynamic. Women are more emotional. Women are, you need to be able to control that, get a hold of yourself. For guys, you got to be strong, you got to be tough, go out and hunt, blah, 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 blah. And part of the outgrowth of that is that women are better at talking about their feelings with each other
Mm.
than men by, even though we've got the male female dynamic within all of us, men have been taught you do not share any of that with anyone, especially another man. Are you kidding? You're going to look vulnerable. You're going to look weak. They can take advantage of you. You're going to look like you're not handling your business, blah, 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 blah. And it's such toxic
Mm-hmm.
masculinity that we hand down, not just to our sons, but we also teach that lesson to our daughters. And it's like, oh my gosh, it's just so bad. If men could talk like that with each other, and as I said, we're starting to see more and more of that as more and more celebrities are talking more about their mental and emotional health challenges. It just opens the door for everyone else to step in because we always need that one person to do it first.
Right.
Like we're never going to break the 4 minute mile until someone broke the 4 minute mile, and then the following year, 1,000 people. Oh, everyone can now run the 4 minute mile
Yeah.
until this guy did it. Oh, okay. So now that celebrities and they could be actors, or male celebrities could be actors, politicians, it could be sports figures, it could be whomever. We're talking about it. It is freeing up. It's to your word, it's creating that space
Mm-hmm.
for us to step into the degree of confidence,
Yeah.
or at least we feel better. Women are just so much better. My daughter would love you. Said, I'm hearing my daughter speak.
Good.
You guys would have, because my daughter is all about that.
Mm-hmm.
She's like, you can be yourself. You can step in. You can own all that, and you should. When you just said what you said, I'm like, man, I'm listening to Sydney talk.
Well, tell her I said hi and tell her I said she's a good person.
She is great. She is absolutely fantastic. She's just so full of self confidence, and yet she goes through the stuff we all go through, but
Oh yeah.
her thing. She does her thing.
Yeah. Yeah. We all go through stuff. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Everybody goes through stuff in their life.
Hmm.
It's
Hmm.
it's part of it. All right, so we've got a great question in the chat. This is from Bite Mark. She would like to know what your favorite poem is. No favorite poem? What about a favorite song? Because songs are poems, generally speaking.
Okay, well, there's rap, there's R&B.
That's fine.
I would say, okay, all right, okay. I will go with you with the song. My favorite song is the hardest song for me. It's Stevie Wonder's As. Because As speaks to being okay with your sister and them accepting. So As. Yeah. Followed by Last Night in the Pips, Midnight Train to Georgia. Breaks
Okay.
me every time because going back to find a simpler place in time, when I hear that song, it takes me back to before we learned about what.
Mm,
And I just want to go back there. I imagine, just vividly, just remembering all the fun we had. So, as is it's a song for my sisters, it gets me. For my family, it's Midnight Train to Georgia. Last night, yeah. To this day, I want to go back.
yeah. I feel like that's what poems and songs are meant to do. Evoke some
Yeah,
emotion, evoke some response, I think. But yeah,
they
I
all
feel
do.
like most songs are poems also. All right, so what's your favorite life hack?
Favorite life hack is my mantra, and it's feel the fear and do it anyway. I don't care what anyone else thinks. Do it anyway. Just
Yeah.
feel it, accept it, and go. Followed by, I'm not asking for permission. I'm just telling you what I'm doing. I'm
Yep.
doing it anyway. That's the life hack I think most people should rally around.
Mm.
Just feel it and do it anyway. That is my ultimate life.
Yeah. And I love that phrase also because it's very much, we were talking about this a little bit earlier, but it's very much you get stuck in that cycle, on that wheel, on that hamster wheel, and you come up with this, like, well, this is the worst that could happen. But then you come up with something that's maybe slightly worse that could happen because you've been thinking about it for too long. And you come up with something maybe slightly worse that could happen because you've been thinking about it for too long. And then eventually, if you do get to whatever it is, most of the time it's nothing like what you've imagined in your head. But what if you had gotten
Yeah.
to it before you imagined these 12 worst things that could have happened? What if you didn't put yourself
Yes.
through that?
Yes.
So I
Yes.
love feel the
Or
fear and do it
you
anyway.
didn't.
That's great.
Yes. We put ourselves through the trauma. You know, um, this is this this kind of goes with an individual. Oftentimes we think the worst thing that can happen to us is outside.
Mm,
Usually the worst thing that happens to you is inside the home. Rarely is it
yeah.
outside because okay, we are so tough, we can handle that. But we're never prepared for what happens in the home. The same thing I think happens with individuals, happens with us individually. We can handle anything or imagine we can handle anything outside of ourselves. Where our challenge is what we imagine
Yeah.
inside. And it's just like you just said, you go to this dark place, you go to this spot. It's another one of those self-fulfilling prophecies. Of course, it's going to turn out that way. You've thought about it, you've made sure it's going to happen that way. You've done everything in your power to get that outcome because we wouldn't get out of our way.
Yeah.
It's we do these things ourselves.
We do. We really do. Well, it is time for our magic moment, which I have a magic wand for that lights up, which is great.
Oh, Harry Potter.
There you go.
Right,
There you go. This is definitely what my wand would look
right.
like. If I was in Harry Potter, this would definitely be what my wand would look like 100% without fail.
You are McGonagall 2.0. There you
Yes,
go.
yes, yes. If you could wave this magic wand and eliminate one common opinion or misconception or theory surrounding mental illness, mental health, or disabilities, what would it be?
There's something wrong with you.
Yeah,
No, but what is possibly wrong? There's nothing wrong with you. Go over there, be by yourself. I don't want anything to do with you. They'll write you a prescription. They'll write you uphill. You uphill. No, that's not it. Come back to the rest of us. Share what's going on emotionally, and then we can begin. That's what I get rid of. I'm not fond of, if you hadn't realized, of the term mental health. Mental health, it's emotional. But no one wants to deal with that because it involves other people.
Mm.
No one wants to be involved because, as you said, we all got our shit to deal with.
Yep.
How the world works. Not we're human. We need other people. So yeah,
Yeah.
get rid of the mental health break. Go with emotion.
Yep. Yeah. Well, I am going to post your links one more time. So if anyone is looking to connect with Keeper, make sure that you click through on all of these. And Keeper, I'll just open it to you if there's anything you would like to talk about that we didn't get to, or any references, resources, anything like that you want to drop. And then folks who are here in the chat, if you have any other questions for Keeper, feel free to pop those in as well. We'll get them asked here in just a second. But Keeper, I'll just give you the mic for a little bit.
I think ultimately, male, female, brother, sister, we all want the same thing. We all want to be seen. We all want to be heard. We all want to be understood. We all want to move forward with our lives in a positive direction. And we can't do that on our own. It's impossible. It's going to require other people. It's that way in business. It's that way in education. It's that way with just life.
Mm.
And you got to connect with other people to be successful in those areas. So you also need to connect with other people successful with your healing. Let me put it that way. Uh, I would like to leave you with just one story as it relates to brothers, if I may. Oftentimes people will look at me and they'll say, "Is your book because you say it's about the experience brothers go through? Is it for black guys?" No, it's not. Stop tripping. And the story is this: the book around child sexual abuse, it crosses religion, it crosses politics, it crosses wealth, it crosses education, it crosses geography, it crosses gender. It's everywhere. My 95-year-old father-in-law called me to his house about 5 years ago. This was shortly before he passed away. And he called to tell me he wanted to talk to me about my book. And when I got there, said everything okay, Dad. Now my father-in-law, he's white and he's Jewish. I'm black. I am not Jewish. I grew up in Southern California. He grew up in the East Coast. He's from Brooklyn. He comes from a middle class family. Everything's stable. Mine is a mess. And yet here we are talking about my book. And he says, I want you to know I understand. He's patting my book. You understand what? I understand you, what you're talking about. He proceeds to tell me, 95 years old now. He was 17. They lived in a place in New York in a two-story apartment, upstairs, downstairs. Best friends upstairs, their families downstairs. They were so close, they kept their doors open 24/7. One day, his mother sends him upstairs to get something. I don't know, eggs, bread, whatever. He couldn't remember. He walks into the house or the apartment. He doesn't hear anything. Then he hears something coming from out of the bedroom. He goes, opens the door. The father of that family is molesting his oldest sister.
Mm.
He goes downstairs. He doesn't say anything. Happens again a couple of months later. He doesn't say anything. He wants me to know, my father-in-law. Not only do I understand, but he's 95 years old. And he's still carrying this.
Yeah.
He wants someone to hear him. He wants someone to know. At 95 years old, he doesn't need to say a word.
Mm-hmm.
He already knows but he tells me his black son-in-law, not his white Jewish son-in-law, not his white Catholic son-in-law. He tells me, I understand. I bring this up to say, this is not something that just happens in isolation. It happens everywhere. And if you're 95 years old and you're still carrying this kind of trauma, it really, for me, it really spoke to the importance of my book, that
Hmm.
other men need to know that they're not alone. And that's what he's telling me. I need you to know your book has shown me I'm not alone.
Yeah.
I was like, he even told me that the only person I have ever told this story to is your mother-in-law. I never told anyone. In fact, you cannot share this story until after I pass away.
Oh,
He
wow.
was still afraid then of the stigma of his
Yeah.
friends knowing that he's 95 years old. We need to talk.
Hmm.
You need to talk to someone. He's carrying this 17 to 90. He's carrying this for 78 years.
Yeah.
I carried it for 45. We have got to learn to talk, especially as men and as brothers.
Yeah.
That's the story I would leave you with.
Well, I definitely appreciate you joining us and sharing some parts of your story. And for those who are interested in hearing more, please go buy the book. And if you buy the book and you read it, make sure you leave a review. Make sure you rate it highly. All of those things, y'all know, I say this all the time, engagement matters. So please, please, please make sure that you go, first of all, buy it. And second of all, rate, review, all those things. So, Keeper, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate you immensely, and this was a beautiful conversation.
Thank you. Even tacos fall apart. Hey.
It's true. They do. They do. Thank you so much for listening to this episode of Even Tacos Fall Apart. Healing through storytelling isn't always a straight path, but it's a reminder that sharing our truth, even when it's messy or hard, can open the door to connection, understanding, and strength. Something Keeper said really stuck with me. Healing starts with acknowledging the emotions we've been carrying and finding the courage to talk about them. That doesn't mean you have to write a book or share your story with the world. Maybe it's just opening up to one trusted person, journaling your thoughts for yourself, or finding creative outlets that help you process what's been weighing on you. In everyday life, this idea applies to all of us, whether you're navigating trauma, feeling stuck, or simply looking for ways to grow. Storytelling, however you choose to define it, can be an incredible tool for reflection and self-discovery. And if someone in your life shares their story with you, remember the power of listening. Sometimes being present is the greatest gift we can give. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear your thoughts. You can connect with me on social media, leave a comment, or send me a message. If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the show on your favorite podcast platform so you don't miss future episodes. And if you're feeling generous, please leave a review. Your support not only helps the show grow, but also makes it easier for others to find these conversations. Before we go, I just want to remind you that healing looks different for everyone. There's no right way to process pain, and there's no timeline. Give yourself grace to take things one step at a time. Thank you for being here, for showing up for yourself, and for being a part of this community. Until next time, take care of yourself, and remember, even when things fall apart, you are still worthy of love, connection, and hope.